Well, hello there. Welcome to part two of OCR's People topic, and I'm going to talk about the different ways of working. When you go to work, then there are different places, there are different styles of work, and how you can be employed. And one thing that's very controversial at the moment is 0 hours contracts, where the worker actually isn't guaranteed any work at all, but is expected to be available pretty much any time. To work. So obviously this could be quite good if you want to be flexible like a student, but it can be difficult if you're trying to plan your income and you're trying to work out how much money you've got to pay your rent and buy food and that kind of thing. So the benefit to the business is if it's quiet one day, you just don't phone any workers in, and then it's cheaper rather than having to pay workers who are standing around doing nothing. And some employees like it because, like I say, it can be more flexible. However, for the business, it might mean that the workers aren't so motivated, they might not be as committed to the business, they might not see it as a particularly rewarding job because they don't know where they stand with the job. And so then that affects things like customer service and levels of motivation. Self-employment is where the person runs their own business, usually as a sole trader, and then they'll do work for other people as and when. So you might be an electrician and you have your own business, you do electrical work, and that's self-employment. But then you might go and carry out work for another business. They might send you off to, for example, people do it like an electrician might work for a letting agency and go and do all the electrical work for all their properties. But they will then invoice the lettings agency. They're not actually paid directly as an employee by the letting agency. The benefit for the business is that they don't have to pay all the things like holiday and sick pay, and they just use the workers when they need them. And then the employee, of course, has control over who they work for, when. But however, the downside is for the business, the self-employed contractors are not going to have the same loyalty to the business, and maybe not as bothered about customer service or quality. And for the employee, obviously they can be told, right, well, we don't need you anymore. So we don't need, if the electrician isn't needed by the property company, they'll just say, right, we don't need you. And then, of course, the electrician has got no guarantee of income. There's something called working while mobile, which has obviously become more popular as technology has allowed people to work, say, on a train, on their laptop, or go to Starbucks and log on to the Wi-Fi and have a coffee while you're working. So workers then don't really need any downtime. Say they're travelling to a meeting, then they can keep going and keep doing jobs and do emails or reading things they need to read while they're travelling. And then for the employee, well, it's the same thing really. They can catch up on their work. They don't need to get behind if they're sitting on a train for a couple of hours to Manchester or whatever. It can be stressful for the employee though, because it means that you're never having any downtime. You get examples of people checking their emails at 10 o'clock at night and then going to bed and they can't sleep, funnily enough, because they're thinking about work. So that's not always a good thing. Temporary work, not to be confused with part-time work. Temporary work just means that you've got a contract, but only for a certain amount of time. So you're not employed for forever on that contract. It might say for a year, for 12 months, it might say for 3 months. It might be that a farmer just has employees that come for the summer to pick strawberries, and then the farmer doesn't need them anymore, so off they go, and that's a temporary job. And obviously the business then doesn't have to pay workers when they don't need them. And for students, say, who only want work in the summer, then that's benefit for them because they only need to work when they're needed. Sorry, when they need the work, when they've got time off university or whatever. However, for the business, it can be hard to find staff. If you think about when a teacher goes on maternity leave because they've had a baby, then we have to find somebody to cover that teacher, and it can be hard to find a good teacher because obviously most of the good teachers have already got permanent jobs. So it can be hard to find temporary staff. And also, if you're an employee and you're always doing temporary contracts, it can be hard to plan if you don't know that you've got a job in 12 months' time. Now, full-time versus part-time work. This is what I said, don't get part-time confused with temporary. I'm a part-time teacher, but I've got a permanent contract. It doesn't say that I leave in August 2018 or anything like that. So really, full-time in most jobs would be about 35 to 40 hours a week, and part-time would be a certain percentage of that. So you might do 2 days a week, or you might do every morning or every afternoon. For the employer, if you've got full-time staff, they're always there. So they don't miss meetings, they don't miss communication, and you know that they're there to do the work. However, the downside for the employer of having full-time staff is if you've got quiet times, then you might be paying them to stand there and do nothing. For the employee, full-time might mean that they're more motivated because they feel more part of things. They don't miss important communications and things. But for the employee as well, part-time might be more motivational because it fits around families, and it can be more flexible if you're doing shift work, for example. Part-time can allow a small business to employ specialist staff. So, for example, say a small business needs someone to do their marketing, but they haven't really got enough for full-time work, then they could employ somebody to do it part-time. And then the last thing is flexible working, which again has been allowed by new technology. It might be working from home. There are actually offices that don't have an actual office where people go to. Everything goes through people's homes. There's an estate agent online where you call them, and actually every call is diverted to somebody's house and they're answering the phone from home. And of course, if people are working from home, it's cheaper for the business because they're not having to supply desks and offices and that kind of thing. You can have workers on shift work, so that's flexible because obviously they're not just doing 9 till 5, so you might need them in the evening. And if you've got good workers and they want more flexibility, then allowing them to be flexible with how they work, maybe doing some work from home occasionally, you'll keep your good workers, you'll retain them, and that hopefully will increase productivity. However, for the business, you can't supervise the employees. So if you don't trust them, then that's difficult if you're going to let them work from home. And if you've got workers on flexible hours, then they might miss meetings, they might miss important communications. So that's not so good. But the benefit to the employee is, like I said, it can fit around family life. So that's one reason why I do part-time teaching, because I can have more time with my family. And it can be cheaper if you work from home. You're not paying for your petrol to commute to work or your train ticket. But as an employee, to work from home all the time, you're not actually getting the social aspect of work. So you might not want to do shift work and doing late nights and things like that. So there are downsides of flexible working. I know that's a lot of pros and cons and a lot of information, but try and pause it after each one and use the end of unit notes to help you as well. Cover and check. Make sure you understand what they all are. Thank you very much.